Elizabeth Ray.
I'm Alistair Stevens.
And Tom Cruise is Senator Jasper Irving in Lions for Lambs.
The year is 1918. Charlie Chaplin is the biggest movie star in the world, but he's beginning to chafe under the terms of his contract with First National Pictures, who are refusing to increase the budgets that they are giving him. Meanwhile, Mary Pickford is also contracted with First National, and her contract is about to run out with no sign of a renewal in sight. The man with whom she is sleeping, Douglas Fairbanks, is in the same situation with Famous Players Lasky, the company that he's been with for the last 4 years. These three actors are the highest paid actors in the world. And they casually get together socially to, complain about how the studio system is treating them. So dissatisfied are they that they hire a private detective who discovers a plot to merge all the production companies in Hollywood.
I straight up thought you were going to say a plot to murder, and then you said a plot to merge, but keep going, still interesting.
It's not a million miles away. A plot between these studios to consciously and deliberately create a monopoly on film production in the United States. Chaplin, Pickford, and Fairbanks, as you might expect, are not enthusiastic about this. They create United Artists in New York City in February of 1919, along with D.W. Griffith. They are freeing themselves from the studio system. They are prioritizing the talent, the stars who make the pictures possible. They make a big first impression, but films are getting more expensive, and because UA is not a publicly traded company, they are relying on the box office receipts of their current catalogue of films to fund future production. It's much slower than they expect. Rather than 20 films in their first year, they produce 5. By 1924, Griffith drops out of the company. UA, facing a crisis, begins to contract with independent production companies and distribute their films as well. In 1933, they sign a contract with the newly formed 20th Century Pictures, who will now produce fully half of UA's schedule in the years to come. 2 years later, that company merges with the Fox Film Corporation. In 1939, Douglas Fairbanks dies, and because Clark Gable is under contract to MGM, Gone with the Wind is not a UA film, and the studio really begins to struggle, despite turning a profit for the first time.
Wow.
In 1941, many Hollywood luminaries, including Chaplin and Pickford, as well as Orson Welles and Samuel Goldwyn, form the Society for Independent Motion Picture Producers, SIMP. Not the best. Not the best, but that's what they chose to go with. It's okay. They form this movement with the intent to shatter the effective monopoly that is now being held by the 7 big studios. Their antitrust suit against Paramount's United Detroit Theaters is successful, and the first age of the studio system comes to an end. They literally shatter the hold that the studios, because the studios own the means of production, the means of distribution, and the theaters themselves. They just can do whatever they want, and no one can compete with them. This brings that age to an end. UA, though, is still struggling. In 1951, it passes into the hands of Arthur B. Krim, Robert Benjamin, and Matty Fox, who stop making films themselves and begin investing in other productions from other companies. Chaplin leaves in 1955. With movie attendance plummeting across the board, Pickford sells up the following year. In 1957, UA goes public, selling shares in the company for the first time. It is successful at last, but it has lost the identity that was so important to it. It is no longer about the artists. In 1967, UA is bought by Transamerica and aggressively rebranded. It's a disaster, and the following year, the previous management are back in place. They release In the Heat of the Night, and The Graduate, and Fiddler on the Roof, and Man of La Mancha, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Rocky, and Annie Hall. They are riding high. Transamerica, though, is displeased with the company's few X-rated movies, including Last Tango in Paris, believing that they are hurting Transamerica's relationships with advertisers. In 1978, in a fight with Transamerica, senior management at UA leave en masse. They secure financial backing from Warner Brothers and begin a brand new company, Orion Pictures.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The new UA, a fraction of its former self, goes all in on the box office disaster Heaven's Gate and posts a giant loss for the year, as well as ruining their reputation. In 1980, Transamerica decides that you'll never make money making movies and quits the business entirely, selling UA to Kirk Kerkorian, who owns MGM. And this is where it gets fun, by which I mean extremely complicated and boring. Okay. In 82, UA is folded into MGM. In 83, it closes its headquarters in New York, those same headquarters that were founded by Chaplin and Pickford and Fairbanks back in the day. In 85, Ted Turner of TBS wants to buy MGM and does so on the condition that he immediately splits the company back into MGM, which he keeps, and UA, which he returns to Kerkorian. At this point, even the technical entity of UA, even UA as a nominal flag in the industry, ceases to exist. It is ended and replaced with a brand new company with the same name.
Stupid. Okay.
There's some crazy maneuvering at this point where Ted Turner keeps the giant MGM UA back catalog and sells off the current MGM production wing, which winds up being subsumed back into UA, with UA now the more prominent brand. They're split apart again in 1988, and by 1990, UA is finally dead. This time, we mean it. At the end of the year, Giancarlo Peretti purchases the shell of MGM UA and merges it with what had been Canon Films, which he had renamed to Pathé in the tradition of the famous French film company. MGM Pathé, though, is terribly mishandled, and it is foreclosed upon by a French bank in 1992. In an effort to salvage something, anything, the bank hires John Calley to resurrect the UA brand. Calley gets involved in Pink Panther and in James Bond and in, brilliantly and famously, Showgirls. The bank sells MGM UA back to Kerkorian in 1996. In 1999, the UA brand is given to the former Goldwyn Company, renamed United Artists International, and is rededicated to making art house movies. It is pretty successful, but then Sony buys UAI along with all of MGM for $4.8 billion. And once again, MGM is effectively shuttered and UA is dead. Early in 2006, I promise, we're almost done. You're doing so good. Stick with me, you guys. Early in 2006, MGM announces that it's going to reopen as a domestic distribution company. That November, it announces that it is resurrecting the UA shingle again. After almost a decade being completely out of business, it is going to recreate United Artists and are going to hand it over in its entirety to Tom Cruise and Paula Wagner, who together have a 30% share in the company. Wagner would run UA as CEO. Cruise would be an executive producer on every single UA film. This is prestige. This is the big time. The first film that the brand new UA would produce, a war drama directed by Robert Redford, written by Matthew Michael Carnahan, starring Redford and Cruise and Meryl Streep.
Sounds like you can't go wrong.
Doesn't it sound like that? It
sounds like you got an ace in the hole.
Doesn't it sound like it's a swing for the fences? Doesn't it sound like it's bound to attract attention from the Academy, which is what everyone involved wants and needs for UA to survive? We'll maybe talk about what happens at the Academy after we talk about Lions for Lambs, after we do the trailer game, because God knows what the people at home need right now is to hear more of my voice. You know, you could take this week if you really wanted to.
I don't want it. I don't want it. Thanks.
First the trailer game, then Lions for Lambs.
Let's go.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me in the back? Good. As I was saying, welcome to Poli-Sci 101. I'm Professor Redford's TA. Does everybody have a copy of the syllabus? It's a super basic syllabus. They should have emailed it. No, we don't have physical copies. We're just sending it. It's okay. You can message me after the class, and I'll make sure that you have it. We're going to look at what political science is. We're going to look at its origins as a discipline. We're going to look at some of the ways in which politics is important to you. Question? No, I'm sorry. Professor Redford doesn't teach this class. It's beneath him. Okay, well, we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. So if we'll look at the first slide, November 2007, Lions for Lambs.
Remember last week when you were talking about doing Lions for Lamb this week, and I said, you know, I'm stoked for this one. I missed that girl. She was so sweet and innocent.
She had such hope for the future.
She had so much hope.
That is kind of where I am, except I think my position is a little more complicated because I'm mad at this film. I think that this film has such incredible potential.
Do you?
I do. I legitimately do.
Okay.
I think that
I'm interested to hear the how.
So many parts of this film are really great, but it falls at the first and most important hurdle, which is have an interesting, rich, deep, and compelling story to tell.
Yeah, there's nothing here.
It just doesn't. So you're left with really terrific actors doing
Yeah.
the best they can with some pretty shaky dialogue. It's
I
kind of-
just found the script to be terrible.
The script, I think, fundamentally
It
is
sucks.
the problem.
Yeah.
Luckily, for all that my extended history of UA at the beginning of the episode ate up a lot of time, this episode is not going to be a long one because
I
there's
can't
really just
imagine.
not that much to say.
No.
We'll begin with the screenwriter, then the person to
Yeah.
whom we should attribute the blame. He's nobody you've ever heard of, unfortunately.
I wonder why.
Matthew Michael Carnahan. He is an up-and-coming screenwriter looking for his big break. He stumbles across a TV news report about a Humvee being overturned in an Iraqi river right at the height of the war on terror, and he skips immediately past it looking for the football game and is ashamed of that reaction. It really hits him that something big and important and terrible is happening in the world, and he's skipping over it because he's looking for entertainment in the form of sports. So he begins to explore this idea, the hypocrisy of the public, basically.
Sure.
He considers writing a stage play.
It feels like it could be a stage play for sure.
Yeah. If I could travel back in time.
Yeah.
Hey, Matthew Michael Carnahan, write a stage play.
Yeah.
I think you're maybe better suited for that. And I
Yeah.
think you could do something really interesting with a physicalized staging of this story. I think you could really
potentially.
do something. I mean, the script needs a lot of work, but I think you could really do something with it. Instead, he decides to turn it into a screenplay. He writes himself into the story. He is Todd Hayes. He is the Andrew Garfield character.
Oh, sure.
Which is why he's just the coolest. The script goes on the blacklist and starts to get some attention.
Yeah.
And Redford finds it. He is interested in it and sees it as both a necessary political film and, he says at the time, a great directorial challenge, because it is crucial that for this film to work, these three storylines have to come together into a vortex. That's the word he uses, a vortex at the end of the film. Elizabeth, does the film in any way exhibit a vortex?
There are
at
no
the end of its
vortices,
running?
no vortices
It
within the
doesn't,
film.
does it?
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say.
It really goes out with a whimper. Right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not the reference that we're using. Comes in like a line,
Yeah,
goes out
yeah,
like
yeah.
a line. That's not the lines from
No,
Line's
no,
reference,
no.
but it
Different.
really could be.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little about the brilliant Robert Redford, shall we?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Sorry. No, no, no.
interesting.
I
No,
do
no.
agree. The brilliant Robert Redford. I do agree with that. It's just that I feel like this is where we begin to move from sexy, compelling Robert Redford into
Sleepy
old
time
man
Robert
Redford. Yes, who's got his cup of coffee on the porch and he's still talking about the good old days, and it's tough. It's
I
tough.
forget who made the joke that it was rude of the production company not to tell Robert Redford that he was appearing in Pete's Dragon. But you're right. He has kind of become real sleepy,
Yeah.
as he should after such a long and
Totally.
incredible. I mean,
Within his rights.
there's maybe not a better career in all of Hollywood. Honestly, he just keeps knocking out bangers for 40 years.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
wild. He's born in Santa Monica in 1936, and he studies at the University of Colorado at Boulder for a year and a half before his excessive drinking and partying
Uh-oh.
gets him kicked out. Undaunted, he takes off for Europe. He travels through Spain and France and Italy. He later returns to the US to study painting at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn and acting at the American Academy of the Dramatic Arts, from which he graduates in 1959. He gets some work on the stage first, appearing in Tall Story and Sunday in New York. He originates the role of the husband in Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park. He's getting
I
some
love that.
TV work throughout this period too. He appears on Maverick and The Untouchables and Perry Mason and Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone and lots more. He moves into film quickly, gets some attention for The Chase in 1966, in which he appears with Marlon Brando and Jane Fonda. That's the first of 4 movies in which he's going to appear with Jane Fonda. The second of those movies, his breakout role, is the 1967 movie version of Barefoot in the Park. Have you seen Barefoot in the Park?
Oh, no, I've only read it.
It's such a terrific movie.
Really?
It is such a terrific
Okay.
movie. He is so charming. It's really nicely shot too. It's
Yeah.
really composed
I'll
and
have
light
to
on its
watch
feet.
that then.
It's extremely
That sounds
good.
like the kind of thing that I want to watch when I'm just wanting to relax with a movie. So I can definitely add that one to my list.
You know how you can't really go back to Breakfast at Tiffany's because of Mickey Rooney?
Yeah.
I think you can go back to Barefoot in the Park and get something not the same, but a little bit similar.
That's really nice.
It's got an
I
energy
would
to it.
love
Yeah.
to have Breakfast at Tiffany's back. So yeah.
Maybe we'll watch that tonight. So he then has this career. He has a number of films, any one of which would be the highlight of anyone else's resume. He has Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with Paul Newman in 69, then The Sting again with Newman in 73. He has The Great Gatsby in 74, a brilliant performance in that film. He has All the President's Men in 76, which is fantastic. He has Out of Africa, which a lot of people like, which I don't particularly like, but it's hard to deny that he has a compelling screen presence and that Meryl Streep is genuinely lovely in that film. He leads the fantastic ensemble in one of my favorite films of all time, 1992's Sneakers, which I talked about on a bonus episode over on Stars and Swords. If you haven't heard that and you would like to, patreon.com/nextword is where you can find that. Then he does Indecent Proposal. He does The Horse Whisperer. He does Spy Game. He does a couple of surprisingly deft and comfortable performances in Marvel movies. That aforementioned Pete's Dragon remake, which is interesting primarily, I think, because it is impossible to determine. Science has yet to tell us whether Carl Urban or Bryce Dallas Howard is more of a goddamn smoke show in that film. Too hot for a children's movie.
Yeah.
A really good CGI dragon in that film.
It's a good family film.
It's a pretty good film.
It's a good family film.
Redford
it's got a great soundtrack.
Real sleepy time.
Yeah, but in a sweet grandpa way.
So all of that said, what do you think of Redford in Lions for Lambs?
Oh, yeah, it's a little too old-timer for me. I mean, I love a sexy professor, and this is not one of those. There is something very uncomfortably patriarchal and also preachy about this guy that I just dislike.
Something white, something very
white. Yeah.
There's that adopted position of superiority over.
And this vague at a California university. I'm like, what are we? No, it's not good.
It's
His feet up on the desk, but not quite up on the desk. Just kind of, he's in the most awkward position throughout most of it. I just don't understand it.
It's lacking specificity, but again, I find that to be a flaw in the script rather than in his performance.
A flaw in the direction too, though, I would say. Like, can you pick a more anodyne teacher's office? Like, there's nothing in there that speaks to his character.
Yeah, that's true. Nothing specific enough anyway.
Just a whole lot of books and
specificity,
a clock.
Right? It does feel, a lot of it feels like it's the first pass. Like, if this was produced today, it would feel like the entire film was generated in AI, right? It would just, like, you type in the prompt and you take the first thing that it gives you, which is probably fine enough.
Right, and that's terrible, but
It is. I can't help but be warm toward Redford. I don't think that his directorial style has ever been particularly distinctive. I don't think that there's anything you can point at on screen and say, oh yeah, there's that Robert Redford touch.
Sure. What else does he direct?
He's most famous, of course, and won an Oscar for Ordinary People in 1980, which is, if anything, the film that does feel like something
Never
special.
Seen that one.
From
okay. But of course I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's just pretty I mean, these are good films, right? He directs A River Runs Through It in 92. He directs Quiz Show in 94, which is a great film. He directs The Horse Whisperer, which is a
I
perfectly
did see that
satisfactory piece. Like, not a film that I'm interested in any way, but
Christian
a perfectly.
Scott Thomas, though.
I am. You're right. There is one way in which I am interested
and
in
Sam
that
Neill,
film.
I think.
Right.
That's two ways in which you're interested.
Kind of broadly indifferent to Sam Neill.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
All
he gives a couple of performances that I really like through the course of his career. I think he is fantastic in The Dish. If you ever seen?
Oh no, I thought you were going to say the piano. Yeah.
No, I think he's fine in the piano.
Sure. Okay.
I think pretty good, but anyone can play that part, honestly. Like, when you're next to this bundle of lunacy that is Harvey Keitel, I think that it's hard to make a mark, particularly when your job is you have to be the boring one.
But who then cuts off his wife's fingers?
Yeah,
I mean, the boring one?
I don't totally buy his
it
emotional turn at the end of that film.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Jane Campion has ever, for me, delivered a completely convincing male character.
I want to love her work so much. I champion her so hard, and I don't get it most of the time.
Yeah. We should go back to her early stuff. We should go back to the movies she made in Australia before she broke with the piano, because they're just about weird women. And I think that
sounds better.
A certain warmth there for that, for sure. After The Horse Whisperer, he directs The Legend of Baggert Vance, a film that I have not seen.
Oh, shit.
That's the Will Smith movie,
of course he
right?
did. That makes a lot of sense. I've seen it and I read it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it good?
No. It's weird and it's interesting. It's very metaphysical, philosophical weirdness.
It is a magical black person story, right?
Oh, shit. Now that you mention it, yes. 100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Oops. Yeah, definitely. Didn't realize that at the time because I was
No,
like,
sure. Well, nobody
14
did. It
or
was
something.
2000. I mean, yeah. It's so interesting saying that because now I haven't seen Bagger Vance, but I have like a sense of the trailer of that in my head. And I'm thinking of The Horse Whisperer and I'm thinking of A River Runs Through It. And I'm thinking that
They are all very quiet films.
very quiet. I'm thinking like mist across a meadow with
Yeah.
like a fence in the middle distance,
Sure.
like maybe a line of trees beyond that,
Yeah.
you know, sunrise.
Yep.
That's maybe like the Robert
You'll get
Redford
some light
shot.
on the water somewhere.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. You'll get light on the water. So after Lions for Lambs, he goes on to direct 3 films you've never heard of, basically. The Conspirator, The Company You Keep, and a documentary called Cathedrals of Culture. And that's it. I mean, certainly he never made the mark as a director that he made as an actor.
Sure.
But still, for all of that, I just find a warmth to him, even in this film, even as he is, you know, kind of handling this really not very good dialogue, and you're absolutely right, wildly insufficient characterization. He's still bringing some. I just think that I like Robert Redford, and I would basically watch him do
Robert
anything.
Redford, and I don't think there's anyone else who could have delivered that performance better than he did.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
No, maybe with that same script for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Meryl. Let's talk about the other candidate for a possible second season of this very podcast.
Right.
Because what a career she has had. Much more wild than Robert Redford's and much more irregular than Tom Cruise. Right? That's the interesting
much more
thing.
movies too, right? This
Double
would have to be
the number
edited.
of Tom Cruise.
Have to be edited down.
And fully half of them are terrible. That's the wild thing about Meryl, is that she keeps breaking over and over and over again. She keeps like arriving and being feted by everyone and then disappearing because she makes 3 bad movies in a row, usually in the space of a single year. And then she'll be quiet for 2 years and she'll come back and everyone will be, yay, it's you again.
That's so funny.
We only remember the highlights of your career.
Yeah.
She's born in 1949 in New Jersey. She acts throughout middle school, throughout high school. She doesn't think about a career in acting until she goes to Vassar. She performs in the play Miss Julie, in which she is so good that she becomes a celebrity on campus.
Wow.
Now,
that's
you and I have been to university. You and I have seen our share of student productions. I can't imagine how good she must have been for literally anyone outside of the theater department to even notice, let alone celebrate her. She must have been incredibly striking. She graduates with a BA in drama in 1971, then completes an MFA at the Yale School of Drama. She supports herself in her studies by working as a server and a typist. She appears in over a dozen stage productions in her senior year, which is so many. This leads to her developing ulcers, and she considers quitting acting entirely, choosing instead the quiet, peaceful life of being a professional lawyer.
No ulcers there.
Luckily, though, she sticks with acting. She moves to New York City in 1975. She is immediately cast in Trelawney of the Wells opposite Mandy Patinkin and John Lithgow.
Awesome. I'm sorry,
right?
Trelawney of the Wells?
Trelawney
what is that?
of the Wells opposite Mandy Patinkin and John Lithgow. Trelawney of the Wells is a 19th century melodramatic comedy. It is written by Arthur Wing Pinero. It's the story of a theater star who attempts to give up the stage for love but is unable to fit into conventional society.
Yes, I do want that.
That sounds great.
That sounds really good. That sounds like a thing I would enjoy.
So good. She does 6 plays in her first year in New York and is immediately a hit. She isn't at all interested in film acting and is slightly dismissive of film acting. In fact, until she sees Taxi Driver in 1976.
Oh,
where
why
she
do
is
people like Taxi Driver? I don't like it.
I think it is a film that has not maintained its ability to communicate with its audience. I think it is revolutionary in 76.
That's true. It was revolutionary then. It was something that was just so different. And now it feels like something I've seen 1,100 times. So,
certainly the intensity of De Niro's performance convinces Streep that actually she is interested in acting in films. That
and
films
that does
can
make
be
sense.
worthwhile.
Okay.
So she starts auditioning immediately.
Fair.
She finally appears on screen in 77 along with the aforementioned Jane Fonda in the movie Julia. De Niro, who didn't know that he was an influence on Streep at the time, sees her on stage in 78 and suggests that she take the role of his girlfriend in The Deer Hunter.
Wow, cool.
And from there, I mean, what are your highlights? What are your Meryl highlights?
Oh man, this feels like a trap because I feel like there's no way that I can say the right movies without someone listening going, "Oh my god, that one."
No. Just what stands out to you in a completely
stand-up
non-linear
performances.
fashion.
Sure. Gosh, well, I did love Out of Africa, obviously. Iconic for Devil Wears Prada,
Devil Wears
obviously.
Prada is unstoppable.
Just incredible. And I think that's where she started to get just like so much of her camp appeal, which is like what I know her most for, I think.
Which is like 6th generation
Yeah.
Meryl, right? It's just
and I guess that's
crazy.
why I was afraid to answer. I was like, listen, it's Mamma Mia, and
There
it's Devil
is.
Wears Prada, and it's Julie and Julia,
Yeah.
and
But that's okay because there's a Meryl for every season.
Yeah,
You
Into
get
the
everything you need.
Woods.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure. Death Becomes Her is one
Death
of my
Becomes
favorites.
Her
Her
sure
92
is
performance in
great.
Death Becomes
I
Her
watched
is
that
just
for the
great.
first time this Halloween, or this past Halloween, I should
guess
say.
it was. Yeah,
I
that's
loved
true.
it. It was so much fun.
I love her in Robert Altman's last film, The Prairie Home Companion.
Oh, of course you do. Yeah, yeah.
She's so lovely in that opposite Lily Tomlin. She's so warm in that film. It's
she's great in Bridges of Madison County.
Absolutely, she's great
So
in Bridges of
lovely.
Madison County, a
Yeah.
film I love. She's great in It's Complicated, which I feel like
She's
we mentioned
great
for
in
some
It's
reason in
Complicated.
last week's episode.
We mentioned that movie a
Maybe
lot.
a couple
yeah,
weeks ago.
it's really
Yeah.
charming, and
Yeah.
we're charmed by it.
It is.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's surprising a little bit that she hasn't done more of that, straight rom-com leading lady.
Yeah.
Except it's not surprising because we don't make rom-coms anymore, and we certainly don't make rom-coms about people in their 50s or
We
60s.
certainly don't. Where have you gone, Nancy Myers? Yeah.
How do
that's
you
true.
feel about Meryl Streep in Lions for Lambs?
I think that she's fine. The character is so dumb and reductive that I can't imagine anybody else doing better than she does with it. But I question how people read the script and signed on to it without making sure that there was going to be a punch up or a rewrite or something.
Well, I'm not sure that the script reads to us the way that it would have read in late 2006, early 2007. I think that the part that we're missing here is how much of a crisis the war on terror represented for liberal politics in particular here in the United States and across the Western world, right? 2007, we are in it. This is the worst that it is going to get. I mean, it's going to continue to grind on awfully for years and years, but this is like the breaking point for those people who supported a response to 9/11 and those people who even understood a response to 9/11 and America's overwhelming, militaristic conquest of places that it had no business being and no plan to get out of, crucially, right? And I think that immediacy brings out an instinct in writers that is pure and is even in its way admirable, but isn't, consequentially going to provide you with good writing. The specter hanging over this film, of course, is Aaron Sorkin. The specter that's hanging over this film, of course.
Why aren't you
is
Aaron Sorkin? I
the
feel
West Wing.
bad.
But
yeah,
here's the thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the West Wing episode Isaac and Ishmael, which is the episode that is the direct response to 9/11?
I have seen every episode of The West Wing, so yes.
Then do you
But-
remember the episode where they wind up in the cafeteria, in the commissary, with a bunch of school kids who were on a tour, and each character in turn takes their opportunity to lecture about the war on terror? Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks, and Aaron Sorkin wrote it. Like,
maybe there's just no way to do it.
I think that liberal writers, I think that politicized writers, right? Because I don't think this is unique to the left. I think that politicized writers want to take to their soapbox and lay out their argument narratively in this kind of way. And I think that it's a really hard thing to do about this particular subject. And I'm not sure that there's ever been a good and compelling narrative drama produced out of these arguments because they are both simultaneously so entrenched and obvious. Like, that is the problem with the political argument of this film, is that it is incredibly goddamn superficial.
Yeah.
It is a first pass
absolutely.
at every single idea. Thus my silly trailer game about poli-sci
yes.
101. It is really, really like the first day of thinking about any of these issues.
Yeah.
These are the arguments that are being articulated. I'm skipping ahead here, but when Meryl Streep tells Tom Cruise that in 1992, her news company was bought out by an entertainment company and that changed everything. Yes. No shit. This is a film for adults. We understand that news is entertainment now.
Yeah.
You don't have to pretend like that is an insight. This film is so frustrating, despite
tough.
this genuinely brilliant cast.
And everyone I really do think is doing good work.
I think so too.
I
don't
really
think
do.
any of the actors puts a foot wrong. I think that all of the actors, in fact, elevate the material that they are given. I think everyone does more with it than the script itself provides.
Yeah.
You disagree?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at, again, the terrible Robert Redford at dinner with, Michael Peña, Rodriguez, and Rodriguez
Michael
and
Peña
Frico.
and Derek,
Is that it?
Finch.
Fin-
Rodriguez and Finch.
Finch, excuse me. Yeah. Anyway, I'm thinking about that truly terrible scene. Just like almost unwatchable. Like eyes roll to the back of my head.
Is that
Bad.
worse than the scene in which they spontaneously invent the idea of mandatory public service, like compulsory public service? An idea which not only has been around for forever, but which a lot of countries follow.
Most countries have, yeah.
Good
Maybe not most,
Lord.
but many. Yeah. Yep.
Let's run through the rest of this cast very quickly. Let's talk first about Michael Peña, who is, let me check my notes. Oh, cutie.
He is a cutie.
Just
How
so
old
lovely.
is he when he's actually doing this?
He's
he looks the
30.
exact same.
No,
that's what I'm
he's like
thinking.
30. He's older than you think he is. He's born in 1976. He'd been making low-budget indie films for 10 years before he gets his break in 2004. In 2004, he appears in both Clint Eastwood's $1 Million Baby and Paul Haggis's Crash. He appears in Babel and Oliver Stone's World Trade Center in 2006. So he is absolutely up and coming when he appears in Lions for Lambs at basically the age of 30. He'll go on to appear in End of Watch and American Hustle. And then in 2015, he'll appear in 5 movies.
Whoa.
2 of which are The Martian and Ant-Man. He'll make 6 movies in 2018, including the Ant-Man sequel, and a really interesting, malevolent performance in the very weird Wrinkle in Time film.
Yeah.
He's so good in that film.
Wow.
So genuinely like creepy and upsetting, which is a role that I've never seen him play before. I mean, Michael Peña is great, right?
Yeah, I like him. I do.
Just a lot.
Always happy to see him.
Derek Luke, on the other hand, was born in 1974 in New Jersey, and his big break, really sadly the most notable thing about his career to date, comes in 2002 when he is hired out of obscurity to star in Denzel Washington's Antoine Fisher, for which he is absolutely fated. He is just a come-from-nowhere triumph in that film.
I've never seen that one.
And it remains the high point of his career, honestly. He's in the movie version of Friday Night Lights in 2004.
Love that.
Seems like he's going to make it big, but never really does. He is Gabe Jones. He's one of the Howling Commandos in the first Captain America movie.
Yes.
He has a decent role in the Steve Carell, Keira Knightley Seeking a Friend for the End of the World film.
Oh, never saw it.
But is just generally making a good career as a working actor, I guess, but never really broke in the way that it looked inevitable that he would break after Antoine Fisher and working with Denzel Washington. From there, let's talk about Andrew Garfield.
We love Andrew
Legitimately
Garfield.
one of my favorite actors.
We love him.
Legitimately, I think, a very, very interesting actor. And he, by contrast, is always younger than I think that he is because he's born in 1983. He's 24 when Lions for Lambs is released. This is his American feature film debut, and I think he just makes good work of what he is given. And he, out of all of the cast of this film, he gets the most positive response from critics and from casting agents, because it's off the back of this performance that he books the adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, one of 2 films that he releases in 2010. The other is The Social Network, for which he should have won the Oscar by like a distance. That is outrageous.
It's a great performance.
That performance is, yes, maybe my favorite thing about that entire film. Just outstanding. He's fighting the material with the 2 Mark Webb Spider-Man movies. He's kind of fundamentally miscast as Spider-Man, but
not his
is
fault.
Pretty charming despite having zero to little chemistry with Emma Stone, which is also a problem in that film, I think, or in those films, I should say. He appears in Hacksaw Ridge with Mel Gibson and Silence with Scorsese. He appears on stage in Angels in America in both London and in New York. Then in 2021, he appears in Michael Showalter's biopic, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. He appears in Lin-Manuel Miranda's adaptation of Jonathan Larson's Tick, Tick, Boom.
Love that one.
In which he is fantastic.
He's so good.
He's nominated for an Academy Award for that performance, which I think is very well
deserved. I didn't know
deserved.
that. That's wonderful.
And he gives the most amazingly committed and heartfelt and humble performance, maybe of his career, in Spider-Man No Way Home, where he emerges as America's favorite Spider-Man, despite being the worst Spider-Man.
It's so weird how that worked, but I know exactly what you mean, and you're right. Yeah.
Outstanding in that movie.
Perfect.
I mean, all 3 of them, I think, are very good.
The 3 of them
a
together.
Weird triumph.
I don't know whose idea that was, but it was really brilliant, and they pulled it off perfectly.
Yeah.
And those 3 guys, just like, I don't know, the way that the dynamic that they had was really lovely and funny.
And Garfield, I think, coming off as just, this lovable goofball, kind of alongside his performance as Jonathan Larson in Tick, Tick, Boom, I think is so powerful and so extraordinary. His commitment to the physical performance of his characters, I always find so interesting. His physicality. You know, even as Eduardo Saverin in The Social Network, I think is so compelling on screen. He's got away with particularly that Sorkin dialogue. I think he handles it so beautifully. But really, I think it's that the sense that he is at any moment going to crack wide open and there will just be a well of infinite emotional intensity.
Yes.
I think is
he is really an eye and eyebrow actor in a way that I really like.
Oh, he is. That's well observed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get a lot of that in Tick, Tick, Boom. A movie which I really, you quite like that too, right?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I did. Yeah.
I know that the world was a little bit tired of Lin-Manuel Miranda at that point.
Yeah.
We were just a little maybe exhausted, and maybe
little
that
limbed
wasn't
out,
the
maybe.
right time
Yeah.
to launch that film.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a triumph. I think it's an absolutely
agree.
terrific
Lovely.
piece of production.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically then our cast. We can spend a long time talking about the production of this film. No, I'm kidding. We can't, because there really aren't any details about it. The movie shoots in DC and LA early in 2007. The cinematographer is Philippe Rousselot, the French cinematographer, obviously, who, believe it or not, also shot Interview with the Vampire.
Whoa, weird. Or
Two
not.
films that look very
Yeah.
similar, I think. Just
How
like
strange.
really, really compatible visions of what a film can look like.
Odd. Okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing special about this film and the way it's
There's
shot.
nothing special about the production at all. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. The production design is really first pass. The music sounds like it is just a flat imitation of what Snuffy Walden is doing over on The West Wing. It's too bombastic for the kind of material that it's presenting here. It's
Trying way too hard, especially when they inevitably shoot down the two young men and, the music swells and you're like, this is in bad taste and you ought not to do it.
It is, while also looking very artificial. That's the sequence more than any of the others. I mean, the others are obviously all taking place in constrained sets, so they make sense on the stage rather than as a film. But that sequence of Finch and Rodriguez on the plateau in Afghanistan, I think really does make sense. You can imagine a way in which that is visualized on stage that would be much more emotionally powerful.
Yes, much more powerful.
Than this soundstage that we're using
Yeah.
for the production of this film. It's released on November 9th, 2007, 18 months after Mission Impossible 3. It opens at number 4 on the box office, making just over $2 million its opening weekend. Number 1 at the box office is American Gangster, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. Number 2 is B-Movie, a genuinely cursed object that has already somehow taken more than $50 million. The
What are you
ongoing
talking about?
success.
B-Movie?
B-Movie, the animated Jerry Seinfeld movie.
Wow, I
Do you
had
remember?
forgotten. I
Yes.
do now.
The ongoing,
Oh my
I don't
God,
know,
that's so
success,
weird.
relevance, popularity of Jerry
Yeah.
Seinfeld. I do not understand it.
Weird.
Just don't.
Okay.
That film in particular, though, extremely bad.
I'm sure.
Fred Claus is the new movie at number 3.
Okay.
David Dobkin's festive comedy starring Vince Vaughn and Paul Giamatti. And then number 5 is Peter Hedges' comedy drama Dan in Real Life.
Yeah.
Steve Carell on Pancakes.
Yeah, on Pancakes. Yeah.
I've never seen that
Never
film
seen
and
it.
have no desire to. That's maybe, out of all of the films that we've talked about here on The Last Star in Hollywood, that is maybe the weakest weekend at the movies.
Yeah, that's a
we've
tough
ever
time.
discussed.
Yeah.
The only other interesting thing happening this week is all the way down at number 15, where No Country for Old Men opens in 28 theaters, making $353,000. It will go on to make $170 million. It will go on to be like the biggest film of the year.
Much more recent. That's really
No,
interesting.
2007, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Ultimately, Lions for Lambs will make $63 million off of a $35 million budget. This film cost $35 million.
Jesus.
Which,
Mostly paychecks, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
I think probably entirely paychecks, right?
Yeah.
You shoot the rest of this movie in a weekend. This is outstanding.
And I guess all the military stuff, that's expensive.
Yes. I mean, there are a couple special effects shots, although the special effects shots are extremely bad. The shots of the helicopter in the air are very bad and actually make me grateful that we shroud the rest of it in darkness and obscurity.
Much better.
I think that's a better choice when you don't have a lot of confidence handling that kind of cinematography. The problem with Lions for Lambs, I mean, it doubled its money. That's a reasonable success for this kind of film with this kind of cast. I think, it could have done just fine. It didn't necessarily
I can see it drawing people to the theaters, but then not keeping them there. That makes sense to
absolutely,
me.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is a cast that is just phenomenal. I can see people going, especially when there's nothing else playing.
Absolutely. The problem is, though, that commercial success was not the metric that Lions for Lambs had set for itself.
It's not what it wanted.
What it
and
wanted
it did not get what it wanted.
was attention from Oscar, and it did not get it. In the end, it is nominated for 3 awards, a long way from the Academy Awards. The Alliance of Women Film Journalists nominates Streep for their, quote, actress-defying age and ageism category.
Oh, no!
Which is a bitter pill to
That's
be
a bitter pill. Give her a hot flash. Is that what that was?
I don't know. By that point, I have lost her so much. Everything that she does in Irving's office, I think, is pretty great. The minute she leaves, she has no more story, and we should cut that.
Yeah,
we can just.
I agree.
It not only doesn't contribute to the film anymore, but it detracts from what we've already previously seen her do.
Yeah.
And yeah, they really just lose her at the end of the film in the worst way. She's also nominated by the AARP Movie for Grown-Ups Awards. She's nominated there just for Best Actress.
Movie for Grown-Ups Award.
The Movies for Grown-Ups are presented every year by the AARP. They are, you know what? We're doing a bonus episode.
Okay.
We're 100% going to do a bonus episode on the AARP's Movies for Grown-Ups Awards. They are great.
I bet they are. I like movies for grown-ups. Okay. Yeah. Wow. All right.
So she's nominated by the AARP as Best Actress. And the only other thing is the score somehow was nominated for Film Music Composition of the Year by the International Film Music Critics Award.
Okie
That's
dokie.
it. No Oscars.
No
continuing relevance. No cultural footprint, I think. Particularly when you consider that this is Robert Redford and Meryl Streep and Tom Cruise, and nobody thinks about this film. Nobody knows about this film.
And that's probably for the best, really. Yeah.
And we should say, I think this is probably pretty clear by the way that we're approaching it, but this was a film that neither of us had seen before undertaking this podcast project. One of the dark horses, which was, I think, why we had the hope that it was going to be good.
Yeah. It's like maybe surprise sleeper hit, just, ahead of its time. No, that's not what happened.
Just real flat. Let's get into our beat by beat then, and this, I promise, will be brief.
We'll go quickly.
Before we get into it, I suppose, let me ask you about the overriding structure of this film. Because the idea seems to be 3 parallel storylines happening in 90 minutes.
Yes.
Except that we break that with Meryl going off by herself at the end, and with the flashbacks to Finch and Rodriguez that kind of puncture the middle of the film and remove the immediacy of the scenes with Andrew Garfield and Robert Redford.
Agree.
Do you think that this film is just shot structurally? Do you think it's just broken structurally? Or do you think that there's something there that could be tweaked and refined? Are you into the idea of the 3 overlapping stories all happening in the same 90-minute segment?
As a stage play, yeah, that's really cool. Like you have a clock in each set that is a real clock
that's
that
like
is actually
local
ticking.
time.
Like that's cool.
California, the East Coast, and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
that's
like
cool.
That's cool. And they're actually ticking in time, and something there is like interesting and kinetic. In the film, no. And every time they like showed the clock, like here's a frame of the clock ticking so that it like lets you know that this is all at the same time or whatever. Was to me, it just made me think about like being in class, waiting for class to be over. You know what I mean?
That is exactly the vibe. You're completely right. Yes. I'm really interested in the structural approach, and I think that it could work. I think you could even make it work in a film. I think that the cutting that we get is too fragmentary. I think sometimes we don't cut with enough purpose. We cut because we don't have anything left to say in this scene. So they're not active cuts, they're kind of negative cuts, right? We're cutting away from something rather than cutting to something that's more interesting. I really like the idea of the overlapping time periods. I think that's really interesting and exciting. But that is ruined, absolutely broken in half by the flashback structure to Rodriguez and Finch. And you get nothing from that.
No.
There's no narrative value in, I think Peña is great. I think that those scenes, there are moments in those scenes which really work, but there's no narrative value there at all, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I'm trying to think of like when it became evident that those two were the 2 guys that Redford was talking about. But I think it was really early, right?
It's when he gives their names to Andrew Garfield. He gives their names to Hayes.
Immediately. So no, it just isn't. I mean, maybe if that was a surprise, although it couldn't be a surprise because it would be inevitable. But I don't know. No, I don't think it works.
Let's get into the beat by beat.
Not to sound bored about it. I'm so sorry.
With heavy hearts already over this goddamn movie. Let's get into the beat by beat. It's the middle of the War on Terror, you guys. We get this brief, casual, like half-hearted montage of our main players, and then we open on liberal TV journalist Janine Roth meeting with Senator Jasper Irving, a Republican from Illinois, as you can tell from his absolutely authentic Chicago accent. He tries to charm her with a big smile and a story on the new plan to end the war in Afghanistan. I think that we haven't talked at all about Cruise.
No.
He gets a really tough deal out of this film because the critical response to this film was, screw you, Tom Cruise. You're just going to be there being Tom Cruise. And I think that that is completely unfair and unfounded.
That is unfair. Yeah.
He is giving at least as much a performance as anyone else in this movie.
He's definitely giving politician.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really natural fit, I think.
It's uncomfortably so. Yeah. But he's got all of that, like, that slick intensity that we associate with real life Tom Cruise.
And like performative manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the performance that he's giving, I think, is much more, it's just more of a performance.
Yes.
This isn't just, showing up and reading off a cue card.
And I want to say too about that performative manipulation. And the thing that made it work, actually, is that he does seem to believe the things that he's saying. But that's not important. The important part is that he needs her to believe the things that he's saying.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the film wants us to believe that, or the film is just insufficient.
Yeah,
in
I couldn't
giving
tell
us
either. Like, is the film
contrast.
trying to like give an interesting kind of bipartisan view, like seeing both sides of the story, or not?
It's just not competent enough, right? It is supposed to be like a smoking bullet at the end of their time together when Janine challenges him about his run for the president, and he says, "I'm not running for president," after Andrew Garfield has already pointed out that people begin their campaign for presidency by announcing that they are not running for president.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like everything about the cinematography and the editing of that moment is like, boom. It's like, oh my God, the revelation that this guy's not on the level. Did we think that he was on the level?
Yeah, weird.
Did we think that any of this is legitimate? Or
did you think that any senator was on the level?
It is just so facile.
Yeah.
It is so stupid. Not to mention the fact that actually we're going to send in small elite strike troops. The film behaves as though the revelation that this new strategy for Afghanistan is a recapitulation of the strategy that was ruinous in Vietnam. It treats that revelation like it is a bomb going off.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, obviously that's what that strategy is. That's the strategy that people always turn to when they are embroiled in long-term conflicts in places that they can't control.
Oh, God.
Like, this is the most elementary military strategy. And it's treated as, again, we mentioned earlier about the compulsory public service, right? The compulsory volunteerism that Finch and Rodriguez suggest as like this revolutionary way to get people involved in the. Yeah, that is an idea. It's a pre-existing idea. You don't get to behave like you came up with it.
Yeah.
This film sucks.
I actually have a note here that says, "This film sucks, period. Its own dick, period."
Wow.
It's just very self-satisfied. It's very pleased with itself.
It is, yes. Particularly, I think, in the form of Redford.
Yeah,
I do think that Redford, that Malley, Professor Malley, is the only character that you could really do an interesting literary textual reading of, because Roth is like such a caricature of a liberal journalist, and Irving is such a caricature of an ambitious, sleazy, defense contractor, military intelligence guy, right? He's absolutely that guy who does 6 years in the military so that his political career will have like something upon which to rest.
Right, right.
Everybody's, and even Garfield, right? Like the Douglas Copeland disaffected Gen X guy slouching in the classroom. Oh man, I just can't care because nothing's important because the world's poisonous and it's turned again. Like, please, all of that first pass stuff. Malley's interesting because there is this contradiction of, you went to Vietnam, but you're still kind of hawkish. You believe in public service, but not like at any cost.
Right.
There is some contradiction and hypocrisy and crunch inside of his character, I think. Yeah. Let's talk about Cruise's set, because I think it's the only successful set that we get. And it's successful as a set, perhaps because it is a set. Because like the office itself diegetically is a place that is constructed to communicate his importance.
Yes, exactly. So
and
that's interesting.
We mentioned at the very end of last week's show, of course, the photo on the wall taken from Taps.
Which is so cool. That's such a nice little touch.
Yeah, I really
love
like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, we are briefed on the ongoing conflict. We focus in on these two young soldiers, Finch and Rodriguez, who get a lot of time communicating with their CO in a room full of like 30 guys.
Yeah.
But these just obviously are main players here. These are obviously
these are our
the
guys.
two who matter. They are dispatched to take a strategically important peak in the north of the country. And meanwhile, Todd Hayes is sad, and he's not going to class, and he's not paying attention, and he's not going to get a good grade.
I don't think he is sad. I think he's just checked out.
Honestly.
He seems just checked out from class. Yeah, like whatever. I'm a frat boy now.
There are so few good moments in the script of this film.
Yeah.
I want to call out the moment where Hayes says that he has a girlfriend now, so like this is why he's busy. I have a girlfriend, and Malley says, "Oh, is that the girl you're always angling to sit next to in class?" And he just smirks and says, "No." That's really good.
That is good.
He's giving disaffected douchebag, which is
douche. Yeah, I've known
kind
plenty.
of great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all of his like excellence, his acuity, the thing that makes him special, the thing that makes him worthy of Malley's time,
very informed.
is completely informed.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see a little bit of it again in another flashback, which again breaks that ticking clock time lock that we've got going on, and. I mean, this is the thing about these kinds of classroom settings, is that they do always look great. And that is what I wanted university to be like. And it wasn't. And I was kind of let down. The media made it look way more entertaining than it is. But that's okay. But even that argument he gives in class doesn't stand out in any way
this is the argument about having a dedicated line for drunk drivers.
Yes.
As a kind of moral equivalent to clean needle programs for drug addicts. That's the line that he is drawing there is, oh, well, if you're making a safe space for people to engage in illegal behavior, why not have a lane of the highway that is just for drunk drivers?
Sure.
Which is, again,
a stupid argument.
I'm using this word too often in this podcast, but that is some facile bullshit right there.
No, it is. And so, but it also doesn't read as any smarter or more facile than anything else in the script. So there's nothing to like make it stand out.
That's it,
you know
right?
what I mean?
Everybody's at the same level.
Yeah.
It's the same when Finch and Rodriguez are pitching their big plan.
And I'm like, is this supposed to be good or bad? I can't tell.
Exactly, because we have this stereotypical dude sitting, the redheaded guy sitting in the audience, just being an antagonist, but not being either smarter or less smart.
Nope.
Like his ideas are exactly that same first thought, superficial level.
Yeah.
Is there anything interesting to this offer that Mally gives to Hayes? This you can leave right now and you get a B.
Then great. Yeah, do that.
It's calling to like the desire to be exceptional, though, right? It's
but
calling
he's made
to
clear that he doesn't
service.
have that desire.
Well,
and even when he was like being slightly exceptional in class, he didn't sound like somebody who actually had something that he wanted to do or change. He just sounded like a cocky kid who was arguing.
And again, it's completely informed, but we have to buy Mally's belief that this kid has potential, which is the closing moment of the film, right? Is him deciding, no, wait, I should do something about that. I should get involved and roll up my sleeve.
Yeah.
Again, in the most like basic and elementary way. Yeah. I'm interested in the idea of the B. I'm interested in the idea of, if you are not here to contribute, then take this token that is meaningless, just making it clear that like a university education that isn't connected to a real drive and ambition and desire to contribute. Right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Take this meaningless certificate because the certificate itself is meaningless. If you are not here to make things better, then get out.
Huh. That is interesting. Putting it that way.
You know, maybe again, God, you're sifting. It's like I'm sitting by the river with my pan here, sieving through it, just hoping for anything. And I'll take iron pyrite at this point. I'll take anything that there is. An old shoe, fantastic. We'll dine for a week. Irving tells Roth that military victory in Afghanistan is a necessary first step to forging a lasting peace. They're going to take these strategic points in order to create a constant presence. Things are bad, and Iran is facilitating the passage of soldiers between Iraq and Afghanistan, which is not, I think, an actually interesting part of the development of the story as much as it is a commentary on the ways in which the US at the time in real life is focused on the battles that we think we can win and not Iran.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, again, kind of an accurate bit of political rhetoric, but not necessarily in any way insightful. I bring this up, though, because I do think that Cruz is effective, right? That Irving is effective communicating this desire for peace in this first instance. I think that facade intentionally breaks as we move through the latter half, really, of their conversation. But I think that he's doing a good job of adopting the kind of rhetoric that the right was using at the time to reach out to the middle.
Sure.
Right? They want disaffected liberals to continue to be hawkish and support military involvement in the Middle East. And I think that it is an astute bit of writing. It is like a well-recognized actual phenomenon in the real world, right?
Sure.
It is reflective of the kind of rhetoric that you would hear at the time,
I think that's true.
Let's jump ahead to Finch and Rodriguez getting stranded on the mountain by falling out of the helicopter.
Yeah.
Based on bad intel. This is, again, right, as we're sifting for these crunchy little bits to discuss, the fact that it is based on bad intelligence, the fact that we are kind of ourselves being misguided, that we are being misled.
Interesting.
In
sure.
both, in the arenas of politics and the arenas of the actual war, I think that's potentially interesting, right? And obviously, it's referring to the whole war on terror and preceding that, the Gulf War, against Saddam Hussein, and the bad intel that was both inadvertently the cause of engagement in war and also deliberately used as a means of justifying a war that was pursued for other reasons. I think there's some interesting complexity to that.
Sure.
But then we just strand these two rather fine young actors on a mountaintop in the darkness, and they lay down for the rest of the film.
The thing about them falling out of the helicopter / jumping out of the helicopter is that at that point it's so chaotic and dark. I'm not sure if this is just like a death drop or if we need parachutes or what the hell is happening. You know what I mean? Like,
it doesn't communicate itself very well.
It doesn't. And that takes me out of it because it just feels too alarming, I suppose, to actually be compelling.
I'll say too, we called out the top 6 members of this cast. There are basically 8 people in this cast.
Sure.
We should probably just talk about Peter Berg as the CO, as the commanding officer of this detachment, who I think is great.
He's doing nice work.
He's
Agreed.
really giving like a nice combination of militaristic authority, but also like a sensitivity and empathy and a resolution, which I find like really good.
Agreed.
And then we also, of course, have Kevin Dunn playing Kevin Dunn. When you need that guy, you hire that guy.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that guy. For sure.
Roth's editor. Yes. Just giving exactly the same performance. You know what? Can you vamp for a moment? Because I'm going to go and check out his IMDb. And I'm going to try and figure out how many films has he been in? How many TV shows has he been in? Because I don't think I've ever seen him give a different performance. But I like him every time.
Either. No. Well, and sometimes that is just what you need. You just need a safe pair of hands, the guy to come in and do the thing. When I was reading Jenna Fisher's book about becoming an actress, she was talking about how like when you're coming in to do a supporting role on something, don't try to do something crazy or exciting. Just fix the toilet. The toilet's broken. They need you to fix the toilet. Get in and get out. And then they'll hire you again to come back and fix another toilet.
Yeah.
And he reminds me of that.
And toilets always need fixing.
Yeah, that's
134 credits listed on IMDb.
Whoa.
Just being Kevin Dunn. He's kind of great. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's known for Warrior in 2011. Of course, Transformers in 2007, where he plays Shia LaBeouf's dad. Chain Reaction in 1996, and Dave, of course, in 1993. He's very good at Dave, actually.
Yeah.
But no, all of those performances are the same performance. But I like him. I do not actually like him in this film because I think that the film does not need that character. And we do not need to articulate
and we don't need that set.
The editorial position on journalism in this country at that time.
Duh.
Because she's already done it in the office.
She already did it.
And because we know it already. Like the film isn't telling us anything new.
It's not news, huh?
And certainly wasn't telling us anything new in 2007.
Indeed.
Right? What do you think in general of the way that the sequence on the mountaintop is shot? Because basically between here and the end of the film, they're just going to be, locked in on this same set. Is it an interesting choice that we are having, the very shadowy and indistinct figures in the reality of that sequence, coupled with the overhead night vision, reconnaissance images, where we're getting this like a more objective but much less human, coupled with this much more subjective, much more human.
Now that you say it, I like it. At the time, it was frustrating to me.
Yes, I won you over. Only 400 other things to win you over, and then this film goes in at the top of the list.
Now that you mention it, that is an interesting way of reading that and of, isolating these two guys by themselves in a place that is just like dark and scary. But as a viewer, it felt underexposed. Like,
Yeah, I think, literally so.
Yeah.
We've jumped around a lot. This beat by beat is not really holding water at this point.
No,
so
that's
I think
fine.
maybe we'll
need
just
beat by beat.
advance to the big scenes, the big pivotal movements as we move forward. We did talk about Finch and Rodriguez delivering their lecture, their class project, whatever, on compulsory volunteerism. From there, we go out to the dinner meeting with Mally, which you're right, is just really bad and really condescending.
Really bad and condescending. Yeah. That was icky.
Well,
I felt bad for the actors having to deliver that dialogue.
Yeah. Me too.
Ugh.
We do get here the title quote, the respect shown by the German officers to the British, I guess not even the officers, right? The German soldiers to the British soldiers during the First World War, that they are lions led by lambs. Reminds me, of course, of Professor Tolkien's quote about an entirely different World War, where he says famously that there are orcs on both sides, refusing to condemn any individual side of that conflict in its entirety. I mean, war is awful.
War is awful. Brings out the most awful people. Yeah.
We cut back to Roth and Irving in his office. This is where she does her bit about her news company being bought out by an entertainment company. And he gets the big trailer line, which is really interesting. Do you want to win the war on terror? Yes or no? This is the quintessential question of our time. No, it's not. Because no one's going to say no to that. It's really bad. He delivers it with such like intensity, with such like, Cruisian mastery that you can be tricked by it, which I think is why the trailer kind of worked. The trailer kind of promised a much more interesting film than this turned out to be.
I'll have to watch the trailer. I didn't do that.
Should.
Yeah.
It is a good bit of editing.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And that works as like, this galvanizing like firebrand moment in the trailer. But ultimately that is a hollow question, because who is going to answer no?
Right. It was hard to, in general, not yawn through the movie. Like it was
Pretty
tricky.
fair.
Yeah, I'm really trying not to look at Instagram.
There's one reason that the film is not easy to sleep through, and that is because, at least in the version that we were watching,
Yes.
the mix is all
Oh
over
my
the place.
God! All
This is the
over
loudest
the
gunfire
place.
I've ever heard in my life.
I completely agree. Up
Yeah.
and down and up and down. Holy smokes! Yes.
And then we're really in our final movement of each of these individual stories. Hayes talks to Mally about this like fundamental sourness at the heart of our political discourse, that it isn't that he doesn't care, it's that he can't care. It's that the thing is poisoned root and branch and there's no way to make it better, so why even try? That seems to be his like ultimate position on this. And
as someone of the exact same age, pretty much, like born within a year of each other, I do understand that people of that age felt that way very much. At the time.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, I think, by 2007 in particular,
Absolutely.
were really, really wearing down. And it is interesting to think about this as a product of 2007. We're immediately pre-Obama at this point.
Yeah,
like the
that's
world is
true.
about to actually
It didn't
change.
feel like
it's
it,
about
though.
to make a huge transition. But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, the latter years of the George W. Bush era feel like stagnant. Like,
absolutely.
This is going to grind on
Yes,
forever with no
and nothing
way.
will change.
Particularly with this country's tendency to elect Republicans when a war is happening.
Absolutely.
is
Sure.
a pretty consistent trait.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much the end of the Hayes story. He will be shuffled out of Mally's office in a really interesting and quotidian way. I love the girl coming in to complain about her grade.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah,
that
I
she's
did.
just annoyed about the grade that she got on the
this
class,
can't be right.
which is
Yeah.
really good. And then ultimately, of course, Hayes will go home, will watch the news. It will be the...
Why is the kid on the couch watching QVC? It doesn't make any sense. Why isn't he watching sports talk or anything else? He's watching like
Is QVC
women sell makeup.
Is QVC the cheapest thing that they could get to put on a TV screen?
Maybe.
That they weren't making themselves?
I don't know, but it's a really weird choice because they
It is.
both are like
Well,
not
it's-
just doing other things and the TV's on, but watching the TV. And it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Are we making an argument about like superficial consumerism? Are we making an argument that ultimately like the last stage of consumerism is that consumerism begins to devour itself? That we begin to consume...
You want this so bad, and I love it about you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think there might actually be something to that.
There might be.
The hollow consumption of consumerism itself
Sure.
is gross and is exactly the
Yeah.
kind of flat idea that this film would come up with,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But then we get, this superficial story about two celebrities' love lives. I wasn't even following what that story is.
Yeah.
But the important thing is the ticker at the bottom telling us about this new surge strategy in Afghanistan. And Garfield gets that look in his eye. He gets that, vision of the future.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe I should do something. And, he's a good actor,
He's
so
good.
I buy it.
He's good.
We get the end of Roth's storyline. Irving just disappears from the proceedings, which
Completely.
is quite
Yeah.
interesting because we're really focused on her through the last,
Right.
basically the last half hour is just her with her editor and then
Yeah.
her by herself driving past like the Vietnam Memorial and what looked like the
Arlington
cemetery at
Cemetery,
Arlington.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing there.
No. I mean,
And-
she's doing great work. She's Meryl Streep, and she looks really sad.
She's communicating a lot of emotional intensity,
Yeah.
but I don't know specifically what she is feeling except like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and just that more and more and more young men will be sent out to die. I think young men and women, but
Yeah.
particularly young men sent out to die. Yeah.
And then, the final and inevitable resting place of the film as a whole, we get to see Finch and Rodriguez gunned down.
Yeah.
And it's genuinely shocking. I think it is genuinely emphatic in the way that it's presented. I think it's the closest this film gets to like a nice bit of cinematography is
Sure, yes.
Finch helping Rodriguez stand.
Yeah.
But having established earlier in the film that they are much more valuable, the reason that the Taliban forces are approaching slowly is that they are much more valuable as prisoners than they are as dead bodies. I'm unsure what we're doing, except that the film wants this grandstand heroic ending.
Right.
This is what happened to these guys. Are we supposed to still feel good about their decision to literally self-sacrifice, right?
Right.
To literally give up their lives in the name of something bigger? I don't know.
I don't know.
Like the film is
the music
so...
seems to think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that any kind of, even a first degree of nuance casts that in doubt
Yeah.
alongside the arguments. Right.
Well,
you
and
can do a
especially
legitimate...
looking at it from our space in history now,
Oh, sure.
where that kind of sacrifice seems absolutely meaningless right now.
I think it also looked meaningless in 2007 because of the war on terror, and it will forever look meaningless in the United States because of the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I think that casts a cultural shadow that will forever make us suspicious about our young men and women being sent to fight overseas in conflicts that are politically motivated.
Right.
In anything other than like a clear black and white good guys and bad guys kind of way. That's an enormously complicated thing. I think it's really easy to sit down and compose an argument about this film that says that actually it is a very subversive piece of like Republican propaganda. That actually what we're seeing is the inefficacy of the left, the inability of the left to compellingly articulate an argument, and the inability of the left to solve problems. And what you need is a stronger hand.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think that the film in any way would co-sign that.
Probably not. And yet.
But it is so inadequate that it could be, I think, turned to that purpose.
Yeah. That's
which is perhaps the most condemnatory thing that you can say about the film as a whole. It's just, it doesn't even work as propaganda. And propaganda is the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, where does this movie go on our list?
I was thinking at the end of it as I was watching it, okay, how bad is this? Let's start at the very, very bottom, which is Losing It. And I have to admit that it's better than Losing It.
It's better
and
than
it's better than Endless Love.
It's better than Endless
Love. But once
Love.
you get to Taps and All the Right Moves, I don't think there's a lot. No, really?
It's much better than Taps. Even if we're crediting it with the same kind of problems, a real political naivete, a superficiality, and an inability to land its own story, even on those terms, it's still better than Taps, because Taps does a worse job of this argument than this film does. I think All the Right Moves. I mean, Born on the 4th of July is a literal point of comparison.
That is true. Yeah.
Is this better or worse than Born on the 4th of July? It's shorter.
It is shorter.
I think that the individual performances are better.
Ultimately worse, though. There were things in Born on the 4th of July that I will always remember and that I will find really compelling and haunting. I'm thinking specifically of the scenes in the Veterans Hospital.
Sure.
Like, that was important filmmaking in a way that this was not.
Though I would maybe argue that it is as politically shallow and as exploitative as the scenes of Finch and Rodriguez dying on the mountaintop. Like, I see a real commonality. I will agree that this film is either one better than Born on the 4th of July or one worse than Born on the 4th of July. But I think that's definitely where it goes on the list, because there's no way it's as good as The Color of Money. And I do think it's pretty, you know, if you were feeling particularly wrathful, maybe we could tuck it in under All the Right Moves. Maybe that is, you know, there's maybe an argument there. But we are way, way down. Born on the 4th of July is currently 24 on our list of 28 Tom Cruise movies.
This is down towards the bottom for sure. Yeah, I would put it under. I'm sorry. I would put it under Born on the 4th of July, but above All the Right Moves.
All right. That's it. The new number 25 on our list of now 29 Tom Cruise movies. That's right.
Disappointing.
29. We are coming in fast toward the end of this series, so we're going to slow things down just a little bit here at The Last Star in Hollywood. We will be back next week with Les Grossman's 2008 Hollywood satire, Tropic Thunder.
Whoa.
A film about which we're going to have a lot to say. I think that's going to be a really interesting film. It does have a couple of really great knockout performances. There are a couple. It's a lot of talented people working very hard at something that maybe they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting space comedically, I think. And maybe we'll have some really good use. And certainly as a counterpoint to Lions for Lambs, it is a really acerbic and satirical and smart take on war as entertainment packaged by the Hollywood media. So I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, particularly on the heels of this conversation. And then we're going to take a couple of weeks off. We're going to take like an early summer break here on The Last Star in Hollywood so that we can begin to prep our next series. So stick around. If you're over on the Patreon, patreon.com/nextword, you're going to pick up a couple of extra bonus episodes, I think, in that period or immediately after that period as we kind of begin to spool up and maybe take for a test drive one of the ideas that we've been thinking about for the next series. And if you're over on the Patreon already, why not check out our very imminent bonus episode on Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights. 3 hours of Mark Wahlberg, uncut for your pleasure, which he is in the film, I believe. That's going to do it, though. Before we leave, thank you, everyone, for your support. Thank you for letting us watch Lions for Lambs for a combined total of 3 hours, like 90 minutes each. That's a lot of time to sink into this film.
Yeah,
honestly.
I'll never get that back.
Elizabeth, would you like to thank our superstar patrons?
I sure would. Our heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, Chris Dawns, and the Lady Gordon.
Thank you all so much. When we stage the inevitable adaptation of Lions for Lambs on the Broadway stage,
No.
you'll all get front row tickets. And
I'm so sorry.
better yet, you don't have to come. That's going to do it for this week. Next week, Tropic Thunder over on the Patreon for the bonus Boogie Nights. We've got a lot of good things coming. Stick with us. We'll talk to you all again soon. Until then, thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.